Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Branding Room Only podcast. Get ready for part 2 of my absolutely delightful conversation with Trailblazer Ben Wilson. In this part of the conversation, we dive deeper into the profound impact of leadership and so many of his fantastic stories. If you joined us for part 1, you've already experienced a glimpse of Ben's incredible journey. But if you didn't already listen to part 1, stop right now and go back and listen to part 1, and then join us back here for part 2 of the conversation, where today we are going to hear more of Ben's stories, his visionary approach to creating a more inclusive legal profession, his strategic insights into mentorship, and the legacy that he aims to leave. Y'all get ready for more thought-provoking wisdom, inspiration, laughs, and actionable advice from a true trailblazer in the profession. So let's talk a little bit more about the legal profession generally.
Yes.
And particularly, as I mentioned in my intro review, that you have been a staunch advocate for diversity and inclusion in the profession. And one of the ways I know that you've impacted lots of folks is by setting up some of these networks.
Yes.
Making sure that people connect with each other. Why is that important? And sort of just tell me sort of what your thoughts are around diversity at this time we are in in this moment.
Well, big questions, and I'll try not to take too long. So I was approached by 2 people who came to me and said, Ben, we need to organize the Black partners in the Washington, D.C. law firms. And I remember saying to them, you don't understand. I tried that, and people did not want to do that. He said, what do you mean they didn't want to do it? And I said, well, I'd host a first meeting, I'd host a second meeting, but I couldn't get anyone else to host a third meeting. And my wife says it's not potluck if you're doing all the cooking. And but Paula, and they happen to be men, they reminded me of my mother. They were trying to get me to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And my mother always tried to get me to do the right thing. So I thought again, and I called together a group of 15 people. There were a couple women in that group, but mostly men. And I said, if we do this, will you host the second meeting? Mm-hmm. Will you host the third? And they said yes. Mm-hmm. And I said, if we do this, this will not be like the church where the women do all the work and the men do all the talking. Mm-hmm. We're going to take turns. So if a man is honored this year, we're going to honor a woman next year. And then a man and then a woman until we get to the point where we all know that we're treating women fairly. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to take a while. And they bought into that. Mm-hmm. And so I knew about 30 or 40 people, Paula. But what happened was there'd be a young woman, 37, who just made partner in her firm. I didn't know her. Someone sent me her name. Mm-hmm. A young man, 39, he just made partner in his firm. I didn't know him. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe we'll get 20, 25 people at our first meeting. It was a hot day in August, and they packed the house. Wow. We had 95 people there, and we'd call it a PowerPoint today. We called it a slideshow. It was so long ago. And it would say Paula Edgar, her college, her law school, the firm that she was with, and whoever was next in the alphabet. And it showed for 15 seconds. The next picture would come up. Mm-hmm. As people were enjoying the hors d'oeuvres and the cocktails, someone would say, I knew Paula. We were in school together. And I knew Robert. His sister went to Howard with me. And I knew so-and-so. Or I didn't know they had anybody Black at that law firm. Yeah. And I'll never forget, there was a young, handsome fellow, Alan Dial, has a white-collar criminal practice, and he was describing what he was doing. And I said, well, we have some amazing people here. There's Billy Martin. He represented the NBA player who unwittingly shot his chauffeur. Remember that big case? Yes. There's an amazing woman who later became the head of the NBA National Basketball Association Players Association. I think she's a Brooklyn native. And she's a white-collar criminal defense. There were all these remarkable people. And I said, you guys can help each other. Yeah. There were former United States attorneys. African American in that room.
Mhm.
And so, and then we almost killed the idea by lawyering it to death. So someone said, how much are the dues and how much should the dues be? And I said, well, wait a minute. If I come over to your house and you cook out, do you charge me for the hamburgers? Of course not. And when you come over to my house, do I charge you for the whatever we have? Of course not. So if we're all so successful, when you come over to my firm, I'm going to cover everything.
Right.
When we come over to yours, you'll do the same.
Right.
You don't have to collect any dues. Ooh, there goes the administrative stuff. Then it was going to be partners. Is that equity partners, non-equity partners? And I never wanted to be a part of a club that wanted me. So I said, so my view is we're going to admit everybody. Yes, it was called Diverse Partners Network.
Mhm.
But if you're of counsel, come on. If you're an associate, come on. If you're with a government and you're not with a, come join us.
Mhm.
And then I realized, then I received these requests. Would you come to Baltimore, Wilmington, Philadelphia? I sound like Amtrak. And we started doing the same thing. So we got groups together, Toronto, Dallas, all across the country. And then I said, geez, we should have a newsletter.
Mhm.
So we sent out a newsletter. You've been in it. You've seen it. It goes out each week to 6,000 lawyers, most of whom are diverse. But we also changed our name to the Diverse Lawyers
Mhm.
Network. I have an adult daughter, and you and she are friends. And it occurred to me if she was in Dallas or she was in San Francisco, African American might not be
Right.
the only diverse group there.
Mhm.
And we need to have allies among groups. And so we changed our name so we were more inclusive among diverse people.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, I remember seeing an Ebony magazine used to have kind of a faces in the crowd section where they'd show Paula Edgar, young woman in charge of diversity, first diversity director in the history of the XYZ company, and have your lovely picture. Well, we're doing the same thing.
Mhm.
And I wanted people to know. And then we decided to get the managing partners together. And then we decided to get the general counsel together.
Mhm.
They can learn from each other. We can reveal opportunities so that others can advance. That helped lead to the General Counsel 2025 initiative that wonderful man, Ernest Tuckett, and a wonderful woman, April Miller Boyce, have led, and they've done an amazing job. And so our newsletter features jobs.
Mhm.
So people are always looking. I have search firms who want to include
Mhm.
positions. There's no cost.
Yeah.
And then we have a website.
Mhm.
So what happened, true story, I go to a Fortune 10 company
Mhm.
and the general counsel is a Tom Brady fan, but he knows that my nephew's Russell. What he doesn't know is that his CEO played football in college with my brother. His CEO was a tackle. My brother was an end, which meant they played side by side for 3 years.
Wow.
And he tells me, I know Ted Wells. Who else do I need to know? And Ted and I had gone to school, and I might have given him 3 names and gone on about my business.
Mhm.
But I took 30 days and I gave him over 300 names of African American women and men and firms all across America in over 30 different practice areas. That list has grown to about 500 now.
Wow.
So when someone says, so I'm in Germany, I'm in Berlin, and then I'm flying to Frankfurt, which is like DC to New York. And it's maybe, oh geez, what time is it? It might be 8 o'clock in Berlin, which means it's 2 in the morning in New York. And I've gotten an email from someone saying, I'd like to find diverse lawyers who do M&A work and not just New York. So by the time I leave, by the time I get to, so I send this note to our network. So I get to Frankfurt and I have 7 names. It's a 7-hour flight to Dulles from Frankfurt. By the time I get there, I have 35 names.
Love that.
From all over America and capable people. And so that's the point, is that when people said they couldn't find somebody, I wanted to show them the list. True story. I'm at a major company in North Carolina. They've decided they're going to hire me. The general counsel is a woman and her chief of litigation is a woman. They say to me, Ben, I see you do a lot on diversity. We care about diversity here. Our team here is diverse, but our outside counsel aren't very diverse. Do you have any ideas for us?
Oh, I do.
They were women of a certain age, Paula. And I said to them, do either of you have teenagers or young adult children? They said, yes. And I said, well, what happens on Friday night if your daughter or son want to go out and they're not dressed properly? And one woman puts her hand on her hip. She says, she changes. And I said, well, maybe your law firm shouldn't get any more work until they change. And then the first woman said, well, Ben, that's unfair. That's hard to do. It's hard to find people. And I then said, what if there's a list of over 300 African-American men and women who went to the same colleges, the same law schools as the people in fact, they're in the same firms. She said it would be nice, but it doesn't exist. And I reached down into my elephant bag. Are you a bid whist player?
I am not.
Okay, well, I would have put my list to my forehead, but I didn't think they would understand the import of that. So I just slammed it down and said, this is the list.
Yep.
And I went to companies that use a preferred counsel list, but they had work that's not on the preferred counsel. One person's crumbs may be someone else's meal, right? And one company spent about $50 million not with their preferred counsel, which tells you how much they spent with their preferred.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow.
And so,
those crumbs.
so that's the point. How do we, and I want to be clear, there's so many, there's Lori Robinson with CCWC, there's Robert Gray with the Leadership Council, Legal Diversity, there's Michelle Lee with the Minority Corporate Counsel Association. There's Sandra Yamate with the Institute. There's my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper. There's our friend Wharton Bellman. There's so many. There's you. There's so many talented. But my goal was to try to make sure that this group is advancing the cause. Every year at the NBA, and I think you were there last year, we had over 300 people at our dinner.
I was.
General Counsel of the Year, we honored the General Counsel of United States Steel. We honored a young woman who was up and coming in-house counsel. This year, we're honoring Sharon Barner, Lifetime Achievement, longtime General Counsel of Cummins. So the whole point here is to bring these people in the room so the accomplished and the starting out are side by side.
It's one of my favorite events of the year because it is a reminder of the power of us in our collective and the opportunities that come from it. So certainly it is a part of your legacy to have brought together so many of those networks to really think strategically about how we can all be the wind together and make a mighty gale force.
And if I could say one thing,
of course.
Listen, I became the managing partner and chairman of my firm, not because of my intelligence. And as your viewers will be able to tell, it wasn't my looks. I had business. And a disproportionate number of my clients were women. And a disproportionate number of them were women of color. So I owe Black women not a little bit, I owe them everything. You hear? They chose to give me a chance. You might say, well, Ben, why did they give you a chance? That's a good question. I don't know this. I'd like to think is that I listened. You know, I don't know a woman who hasn't been in a room, has made a point, have it ignored, and 5 minutes later a man says the same thing and it's treated like manna from heaven. So I listened, and they took a chance. They took a risk when they gave me the work. And I fought like hell. I didn't try. And we won. And when we won, they sent me something else. And they told their friends, and they sent me something else. So I owe them. I can never repay that debt. The other thing that I think is so important is we have to care about the other person. Again, that I don't know what law school where they teach you this, but you have to care about the other person. Years ago, Denzel Washington made a movie in our neighborhood. And my wife and the middle-aged women went out and made cookies. Paula, do you know why she didn't run off with Denzel?
Tell me.
Oh no, come on, we're grown-ups. This is an adult audience. Go ahead.
um, because they don't have a mortgage together. I don't know why.
Everybody strikes out. The answer is he didn't care about her.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. If he did, think about it. What if he was on the screen right now? You talked about Oprah. What if
I can't wait until Denzel is on the screen.
That's what I'm saying. See, you would just kick me to the curb. But I learned a lesson there. I cannot be out cared. There's always somebody smarter. That's in my case. Always somebody better looking. Always, always, always. But if the other person cares about you, they will choose you, even if that other person is more qualified. Why? Because I know he cares about me.
Yes.
And then how do we show people we care about them? Not we should say thank you, of course, but when they're looking, we help them. When their kids or their friends need a break, we help them. When they're going through something in their life, we are there. Think about your best friend. When her mother's in the hospital, she has cancer, you're there. When she meets Mr. Right and she's the happiest she's ever been, you're right there cheering her on. So that's really, I think sometimes we forget that caring as important as anything. You see, one of the people, well, there's a lot of them, but Wiley Brandt influenced me. Dennis Archer influenced me. John Milwaukee, but they all influenced me. But they were kind to me when everybody else ignored me. And when with Wiley, I would go with him to these functions, and I thought I was his favorite young person. And there'd be a young woman like you or another young man, and they thought he was their favorite. And I couldn't get mad at him because all he'd ever done was treat me with kindness and respect and encouragement. And what I learned was I always felt better after speaking with him. That's why what Maya Angelou said is so important. It's how you make the other person feel. So if we can change our pronouns from I, me, mine to we, us, our, we have a chance. And the last point about brand that I would make, I met the Coca-Cola CEO a few years ago, and I've heard you mention this, but obviously Coca-Cola has a great brand.
I love Coca-Cola.
And he said a brand is nothing more than a promise, and a great brand is a promise kept.
Yes.
So,
I love that.
So I try to be someone that keeps his promise. If I say I'm going to do something, I try to do it. If I can't, I'll tell you I can't, and then tell you when I can. And I just think those are really, really important things. So again, when I speak, and I speak to people age 18 to age 70, 3 or 4 times a week, and they are ready to throw in the towel. They're ready to wave the white flag of surrender. And I see it as my mission, first of all, to ask, what is it that you want to do? What is your dream? And you know, Paula, some are young, have forgotten their dream. I said, well, what's your dream? What would you like to be? And then I asked them, what are the steps we need to take to get there? Because seldom is it a baby step. What was that game we used to play in the street, Mother May I? And it's seldom one baby step and you're there. There's a lot of giant steps. But we talk about what those steps are and how to get there. And just the mere taking action is empowering.
Yes.
When you get off your rusty dusty and you make the calls and you send the emails, and you know this in your work, it's empowering. And so that's all. I just I think we have to get to the point where it's not just about us. At some point, it has to be about the other person.
So I'm going to ask you 3 final questions, and I already taken more time than I promised.
No, you haven't. And by the way, when you need to cut all of this, you cut whatever you need.
I'm only going to cut that one part, and that's all.
Oh, by the way, my friend's name was John Daniels.
There we go. Perfect.
So
done.
Remarkable man.
So now I don't have to cut it. Even perfect. So here, Tell me about, well, let me preface this really quick. I moderated a panel that you were on at the National Bar Association convention in New York, whatever it was, at 2019, 2018. And you spoke about your wife.
Yes,
And
yes.
I remember being like, I, I mean, I'm married. I love my husband's the best. I'm like, I want my husband to talk about me like that. It stuck with me because I thought to myself, you had talked about a down part in your life. I don't know if,
Yes, yes.
but that how it was her love that brought you out of that. And I thought, there's no way I could have you on my podcast and not bring that up, because I do think a big part of our brands is the people who support us.
Yes, amen. Amen.
Mhm. So I just want to give you a little space to give a little shout out.
Well, thank you. So listen, when I wanted to quit, my wife said, not yet.
Mhm.
And when I thought my ship would never come in, she said, your day will come. And so there has to be someone that believes in you before anybody else does.
Mhm.
You know, Paula, that's why mothers
Mhm.
are the most important people in the world, because when the father's given up,
Mhm.
when the doctor's given up, when the teacher says your child can't learn, when your child rejects you,
Mhm. Mhm.
curses you, reviles you, the mother still never gives up.
Mhm.
And so, first of all, my wife's a great mother, but she's also a great wife.
Mhm.
And so she believed in me, and I'm grateful for that. She was tougher than me. My wife is from Pittsburgh, and she's tough, but that's redundant. Those things. And she grew up on the Hill. I
Mhm.
met her the first day in law school. Paula, the one thing I learned in college was where to stand so you could see the whole room. And so, the first day of school, they have organizations.
Yes.
I saw her, and oh boy, I was smitten, but I was scared to talk to her. And I finally got up my courage. It was the Isley brothers. Who's that lady? And
Mhm.
and of course, I wanted to give her a tour of Cambridge. All I knew was where the football stadium was, but I could see like a mile away, and her vision was not great, and couldn't have been great if she saw me. But suffice it to say, she saw through that ruse too. But I've learned in life, you're not going to get everything done in one day. My goal was to get a second date, and the rest is history. But she was tough. She was a terrific trial lawyer.
Yeah.
I remember her blistering cross examination in the AT&T litigation and antitrust litigation. So she's a remarkable lawyer. She was the first Black woman partner at Sidley and Austin, and in any of their offices. And so she was tough, and I'm grateful for her.
Yeah.
And our daughter Rachel, and almost all of her success, you should blame on her mother, who who believed in her. And
Mhm.
I'm sure you feel that way about yours as well.
I
And
definitely do. Okay. So everybody who comes on my podcast has to answer two questions.
sure.
They have to answer more than that, but before I move to those two questions, and I know I'm trying to take every minute of your time, is this: what do you do for fun?
Well, so I exercise regularly. I was on the elliptical this morning for 65 minutes, greatest hits of Stevie Wonder. So I take an artist and I get through the greatest hits,
I
and
listen.
so I do that. That reduces, huh?
I listened to Stevie this morning. That's so. I listened to Az on repeat all morning. That's so. We're so aligned.
So we have that reduces a lot of stress. Now I'll tell you what, one of my favorite songs, Stevie, was "I Was Made to Love Her."
Mm-hmm.
But I like Whitney Houston's version. He says, I was born in Little Rock. She says, I was born in Newark.
Mark.
And but I like
Oh, I love
so
that.
that's one thing. I
Okay.
read a lot.
Mhm.
I'm only 10 years behind the times, but I finally got through Isabel Wilkerson's books.
Oh,
I love them both. And The Warmth of Other Suns,
yeah.
it's absolutely amazing. I like Cass, but I love The Warmth of Other Suns. And I've
Yeah.
read a recent biography on King, on Medgar Evers. I've got about 8 of them that I've read there, but that's my way of listening, is to read.
If you love Cast, you definitely should watch Origin if you haven't
That's
seen
what
it.
everyone says. That's what everyone says.
I'm
But you got to read Warmth of Other Suns, because to
yes.
me, that's the one I would make into a movie. But but I did see Origin, actually. Thank you. And
Oh.
but I also support my family. So my brother was sick.
Mhm.
I went to all of Russell's games in college.
Mhm.
Went to many of his professional games.
Mhm.
To his wedding. I wasn't trying to displace my brother. He had a great father,
Mhm.
but I was trying to be a good uncle.
Yeah.
People ask me about him, but his older brother was quite an athlete and quite an entrepreneur, and has his own business, very successful, lives in Louisville, Kentucky, with 3 daughters.
Wow.
I have a niece, Russell's youngest sister, who was the point guard on Stanford's national championship women's basketball team 2 years ago. And she was the best athlete in our family. Most of all, I have my own grandson, and Rachel's and Cecil's son. He's a cute little boy, and I read with him every time I see him. We read for a couple hours. So those are the things that I do, and I try to invest in others. So in terms of my board work, in addition to the corporate boards, I serve on something called the DC Judicial Nomination Commission. So we select the judges for our Superior Court and our DC Court of Appeals. We don't have a Supreme Court. That's our highest court in DC. And the DC Bar Foundation, I try to use my relationships to raise money for the groups that provide legal services to the poor in the District of Columbia. And as in most major American cities, housing is a great issue. Single women are the ones who are disproportionately affected, single mothers leaving the families. And so that's another place where I spend a lot. And then I teach at the Howard Law School. And this is my 19th year. I love my students from Howard. They're as enterprising as any I've ever seen from any law school in America. And I wanted to see more people of color practicing environmental law, working with others. Again, we have almost 300 students who are out there now, and they are having an impact, and I'm very proud of them. Very proud.
Well, speaking of impact, I usually ask this question about, branding room only is a take on standing room only, and what would be your standing room only moment that people would come to see or experience about you. But I had the pleasure of getting a response about this from your daughter, and I thought I would share.
We better listen to her.
Yes. She says, in a short window of time, when he's in the presence of someone, whether it is by phone, Zoom, or in person, he's able to connect and have an impact in a way that can change the course of someone's career. He does this by sharing his long list of contacts with anyone and says, invoke my name and they will help you. In doing so, he has helped people keep their jobs, get a job, keep it together after losing a job, stay married, be a better parent, etc. Not many people can connect with you and meaningfully impact you in a way that can change the trajectory of your life. He can. I read it and I said to myself, I already knew that I was going to enjoy this. If all those of you who are looking on this on YouTube will see that my face, I'm going to have cheeks hurting because I've been smiling so much throughout this. But Ben, it has been a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And if you ever want to talk about anything else again, you're always welcome to come and drop some science to my peoples.
You have me back anytime you want. Listen, the one thing we didn't talk about, and I realize this may not be sufficient time for it, is the board service. I invest a lot of time. I'm not talking about my own service, but I teach or I participate in a program that Santa Clara University has. It's called the Black Corporate Board Readiness Program. And we have about 25 to 30 Black women and men in each cohort. We're up to 10 cohorts. About 95% of those in the first cohort are on a board, about 90% in the second cohort, 80 in the third, and so on. We have one guy who came in the fifth cohort. He's on 4 corporate boards.
Wow.
And the point here is we wanted to take advantage of the George Floyd situation where people said they wanted a change. We wanted to make certain that people were aware there are a lot of talented people. Paula, I think I told this story, and I believe you were with me. Years ago, I was watching a boxing match, and Leonard was fighting Wilfredo Benitez. And the announcer said, Sugar Ray Leonard is a handsome black man. And he was, and he is. But Benitez was handsome too, and he was black. And I said, can there be two? You know? And then asked my wife, could there be a third? Not brave enough to get in the ring. She said, no. And so she stuck with those two. But my point is, they're these really talented people. And so I want people to realize their dream. And what I want more than anything else is when they get there, I want them to hold the door open for someone else and to me. So true story. And I feel compelled to tell this. There's a young man who called me. He was in Austin, Texas, and he just graduated from the University of Texas. He did not have a job, law school. His wife had a job. And there was a sadness in his voice. It was like hearing Ray Charles sing. And I said, well, I'm going to be in Austin, Divine Intervention. But we had an office in Austin. And I said, well, meet me for breakfast. He said, 8:30. I said, no, 7 o'clock. I said, bring your wife. Because I wanted to see how hungry he was. And he was there at 7. And we talked about what they wanted. I shared my list with him. And he dutifully called everyone. And at that time, there was a new federal agency called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the senator from Massachusetts, Harvard professor, she was the head of that agency. Her name's escaping me now. Short haircut, Oklahoma. In any event, this guy gets a job. But then he brings his general counsel to our Diverse Lawyers Network meeting. And there were 12 other Black partners and associates not happy at their firms who wanted to join this agency. So this man who had no job not only finds a job, but he helps 12 other people. He delivers other people, right? And now, fast forward a year and a half later, I'm coming through the Baltimore, Washington airport, dog tired, and there he is with his wife. She's pregnant with their second child, and I speak to them. She has a job that she loves. He's gotten 3 promotions, and all's right with the world. And the man who was as sad as you could ever meet could not have been filled with more joy. So for me, that was gratifying. But what's most gratifying is when he passes it on to someone else. That's where we need to be. Usually you talk about mentorship and sponsorship. I check you out. And I love that. And mentorship, I think, is very important. But what I find, the young people I meet, they know how to dress properly for the most part. And they exercise good judgment. What they need more than anything else is a meaningful chance. So when I had all this work, I put 3 young Black associates on my work, and they became partners in the firm. When I left them clients that would be theirs. You know how your grandma leaves you 40 acres, or she leaves you a garden. And you look up next year, man, we got apples, we have pears. Where did those come from? Well, grandma's been planting them for 30 years. And so the point is, that's really where we want to be. But I appreciate what Rachel said. I hope it's true, but I just think that's what makes life worth living. Is, can you, in the Bible they talk about begatting. So and so and so begat this child. Who did you begat? Whose career did you aid? What door did you open? What work did you give them? What job did you help them obtain?
What impact, right?
It all let the congregation say amen. And so when you can say that, then you live forever. You live forever in their lives, the lives that they touch. And that's a reason to live forever, to perpetuate good, right? And,
well, I think that is a perfect way for us to end this conversation, but I'm taking you up on your offer to have another one, because this should be part 7, 8, and 9. Everyone, I implore you to listen, but also to share this, because our impact should be catalyzed by other people's inspiration, inspiring us. And I am so inspired to continue having impact. And one of the ways I do that is with this podcast. So please download, share, and take something away. Do good by what you've heard today. Next time in the branding room, see you then. Bye, and thank you, Ben.
All right, thank you. And know you inspire me too.
As we bring part 2 of our conversation with Ben Wilson to a close here in the Branding Room Only podcast, I am truly filled with so much gratitude as I reflect on Ben's kindness and the transformative insights and powerful narratives that he shared in both parts of our conversation. Ben is truly, truly the definition of a trailblazer. His dedication to advancing diversity and inclusion, environmental advocacy, coupled with his strategic vision for leadership, offers so many invaluable lessons for all of us. I hope that his stories and the strategies that we discuss have inspired you to think about your own impact and how you can contribute to positive change in your community and beyond. As always, thank you so much for turning your dial to Branding Room Only. Remember to share this episode with any others, that's everybody, who would find it inspiring, and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms for more conversations about the impact of authentic personal branding. Ben, so much love to you. Thank you so much for these fantastic conversations, and I can't wait to have you on the podcast again. Everybody else, keep striving for excellence and making a difference in the world around you. Let Ben be our guide. Thanks.